Please.
Baruchim aboim b'shem Hashem b'shem Yegin Shir like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harav Yakov Zos Mishlita Mishailis HaShechires B'chag Shavuos. Shavuos questions and answers. To have the great sliz sponsoring a shir called Yegin Shir 718-851-8651 and email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Now is the time of Eloi Medrash Ikel Amaisitz. Erev Shavuos, few hours, we're going to Makabel the Torah, B'simcha. I want to touch upon some of the main halachas that we have to know. In a certain sense, that we'll start with one child that we could say, Makam inichalanu min hashamayim. As we'll see, it's a very common but a very challenging question that's not really found in the earlier paiskim. So let's have that early Simchas Yom Tov. We'll give a little of a zevach mishpacha to have to take home with you. We'll start with a simple shayla. Do we make Tosefes Shavuos on Erev Shavuos? In other words, every Yom Tov, every Shabbos, we have to add a little bit and make Shabbos or Yom Tov a little earlier. Do we do the same regarding Shavuos? What's the shayla? The Rav, the Mishtabura Paskin on the mitzvah of Tosefes Yom Tov is a deraisa. So why should Shavuos be any worse? And you'll soon see the same shaylas. When do Nashim light neiros? Do they light Erev Shavuos? Can they make a shehecheyanu if they light earlier? What's the shayla? So we seem to be convinced that there's a mitzvah, probably at least from the Aseres HaDibros, that Shavuos has to be late. We say the word tmimos, it has to be tmimos, and you have to make Shavuos late, even if you daven Ma'ariv on a regular Leil Shabbos a few minutes after Shkia. No, Shavuos, Ma'ariv has to be late, the seudah has to be late. The question is, where's that coming from? Where does that say? And if it does say someplace, is that enough to be oika mitzvah deraisa of Tosefes Shavuos? But let's be more aggressive. You know, Shavuos is always too short. By the time you finish the seudah, you come to shul, there's a few hours to learn. You know, I always say the best place to be for Shavuos is Australia. We have brachim in the yeshiva. If you have a long seudah, you come to davening, come to the learning at 8 o'clock p.m. because there it's the winter, it's the shortest days of the year. From 8 to 6 is a machaya. But here in Chutz La'aretz, especially in Europe, it's even later. Why don't we make an early Shavuos? And we'll have many hours to learn. Enochanami Pesach, that's Tosfos in Arab Psachim, we can't make early Pesach because you have to eat the matzah balayla, and the kiddush makam seudah has to be balayla. Okay, Fafalin, okay. Sukkos, also we can't make early Yom Tov because you have to eat in the sukkah by night. So early is not night. Shmini Atzeres is a kiddush of the Marshal. The Taz and Tafrei Samaches quotes it that if you're going to make early Shmini Atzeres, you're going to have to eat in the sukkah. But can you make a leishev? Because really it's still a Shana Rabbah. So else that, forget about it. The one Yom Tov you're allowed to make early Yom Tov is Shvi Shel Pesach and or achronah shel Pesach, because there's no mitzvahs you have to do at night, so make early, fine. L'chayra, Shavuos, it should be another example that you can make early Yom Tov. There's no mitzvahs balayla. You know, if you eat the cheesecake by day, you're also yaitza. So what's the problem? Why don't we make early Shavuos? So again, we are convinced without a shadow of doubt, it says someplace that you have to have it as late as possible. Vushtatus. So to my knowledge, the first and earliest mention is the Shloah Kaddish in the beginning of Masechta Shavuos. In the Oiz V'Had print, it's Chele Gimel, beginning of Chele Gimel Mamish. It's also in the Emek Bracham, the Shloah and his father, but it's the same idea. The Shloah writes, I've been Makabel from my Rebbe at the Rash Lublin, who Makabel Ishmi Pi Ish from Agoin Rabbi Yankov Polak. Rabbi Yankov Polak was famous for making the Derech Halim, but he was probably 600 years ago. So the Shloah was Doris before him, Av Kabbalah Ishmi Piyish, from this Rabbi Yakov Polak. Now listen to his Yisoid. That Lamaisa on Shavuos, you have to eat the seudah, make kiddush, dafka balayla. Why? Because the pasuk says Sheva Shabbos Tmimos Tiena. The Yom Tov of Shavuos begins after you have 7 full weeks. So if you're going to make early Shavuos, you don't yet have 7 full weeks. You have to start from the first day of Sfira until the end of Sfira, 49 full days. On the 50th day, you make Shavuos. If you're going to make early Shavuos, you don't have Tmimos. Now, this is, to my knowledge, the makar that you can't make early seudah. Now, listen to this. I know you might find this surprising, but what should I do? As I state, Zok the Shlo himself, don't ask me, why do we daven early Ma'ariv on Shavuos? I tamimus. In other words, they daven early Ma'ariv. By the time they got home, they made kiddush by this man. Why can you daven early Ma'ariv for the Shlo? Zok the Shlo, it's not a problem. Because the Gemara says, Masech the brachas, that Rav used to daven on Shabbos, the Motzei Shabbos Shmei Nesra, not only Friday for Shabbos, you can even daven Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos. So obviously when you make early Ma'ariv, it doesn't mean it's the next day. So you can take daven early Ma'ariv on Shavuos, no problem. But don't make Kiddush before this man. Now the same Yisoid is quoted in the Masas Ben Yamin, also quoted in Yakov Polak, also one of the Kadmoinim, and we see two things. First of all, the makar of the minig is a Yakov Polak, only not to have the seudah mi boijoy, but Ma'ariv yes. Okay, but the plot is sticking. The Magen Avram and our Sim in the beginning of Tav Tzadik Dalet, he taka says on Shavuos we don't make a seudah, a kiddush before Vadei Laila. Quotes the Masas Ben Yamin. The Taz is the first, to my knowledge. Don't daven Ma'ariv until it's Laila. So now we see that the makar is the Rabbi Yakov Polak. Be'ikah he's speaking about early seudah. But we did see a Taz that even Ma'ariv don't do until it's Vadei Laila. Now this is understandable. Because if you tell me that by making Shavuos early, you're making it before the Tmimois, so davening Ma'ariv is the same problem. You can say a Ma'ariv as Yom Chag HaShavuos Hazeh, Mekadosh Shov Azmanim. So that's why it makes sense to say, like we said, that even Ma'ariv should not be done before Laila. And indeed, the Pri Megadim, he seems to hold that really it's not a machlokes. Even they agree Ma'ariv should not be early. But at the end of the day, he does say that now we understand that all three Yomim Tovim, Pesach, Sukkot, and now Shmini Atzeres, and now Shavuos, cannot be early because of the reason of Tmimis. So Lamaisa, he seems to suggest it's taka not a machlokes, and that's the minig, no doubt about it. The Rav Shulchan Aruch and Tav Tzadik Dalet Beis, the Mishnah Sivkot and Aleph, both say the minig is we don't daven Ma'ariv and certainly not have a seudah before Vadei Laila. The Rav Kedarki, in a few words, seems to say another gem. He says maybe the Kiddush is even the seudah should not be before Laila. What's the Kiddush, even the seudah? Because someone might make a cheshbon. If the only problem is davening Ma'ariv early, I have a great idea. I'll daven mincha, I'll be makabel teisefes Shavuos, I'll make the seudah, and when I finish, I go to Ma'ariv in shul, and I'll stay to learn a whole night. Mechayah. Like many people do that want to be yoitz the groshita, that you don't want to make early Ma'ariv on Friday night, but you have to have an early seudah, you have a family. So you daven mincha kabbalah Shabbos, have the seudah, and daven Ma'ariv bisman. Maybe that's the eitzah for Shavuos. Zok the Rav, no. The problem is not just the Ma'ariv. Forget the primary problem is the Kiddush and the seudah before Vadei Laila. So Rabbi said, let's be clear. The Ikka minig is Rabbi Yakov Polak regarding seudah. The Taz extends it to Ma'ariv as well. I will mention the Dastar, the Bajana Rav, quotes the Taz and he says, but it's a Kiddush. Where did the Taz get Ma'ariv is a problem? And the Aliyah Rabbah says, the Taz says Ma'ariv is a problem, but tzorachiyah. So if someone, as we'll soon see, has a shas atchak and he davens Ma'ariv early, you can't say it's wrong. Because the main minig is regarding the seudah, Kiddush. But we did see the Taz, and that's taka the minig ha'olam. Now, this gives meaning to Rav Shlomo Zalman once said in jest, but there's a message here. He says, the Welt is so makbid about Tmimis on Shavuos. At the end of the day, it's only a minig. You know which Tmimis is the Raisa? Tamim tiyem Hashem olekecha hisalech imay betmimus. When it comes to worrying, we have to know it's an issa deraisa of worrying. You have to have tmimus. That's a deraisa of choladeis. The tmimus minig of Shavuos is a minig. Okay, now let's apply this lemaisa. First of all, people ask, if I want to keep the minig of davening bisman, what zman do I have to wait for Ma'ariv? So obviously those that go to Rabbeinu Tam don't ask questions. Before 72, nothing to talk about. But for those that are not makbid like Rabbeinu Tam's man, l'chayra, you could even start Meir by 50. Since 50 is one of the zmanim of Laila, so, and the whole davening Meiriv is just the minig upon minig. So if you want to wait 72, fine, but 50 should be enough. This way the seudah is definitely beyond 72. Now, the next question, I gave for all of us, and let's think about this because it's very negeya. The question is there a mitzvah of Tosefes Shavuos on the Yom Tov of Shavuos? So we would wonder, what's the shaila? The Rav and the Mishnah and Simon Reish Samach Aleph both say that Tosefes Shabbos is the Rai, so that's Pashit, like Yom Kippur, and even Tosefes Yom Tov. So if there's a mitzvah Tosefes Shavuos, what's the shaila? What are we asking the shaila? So maybe we're going to say the following. If we're going to make early Shavuos, we're going to makabel Tosefes Shavuos, we're going to be violating Tamimas Tiyana. So just like we don't have an early Ma'ariv and early Seudah, maybe you're going to say a kiddush that there's no Tosefes Shavuos. But the emphasis is hard to understand. Because if Lamaisa, there's a mitzvah deraisa of Tosefes Shavuos, what gives us the right to say Shavuos are different? Because you're a minig of Tmimos? In other words, let me add more geshmak. We don't make early Pesach, and we don't make early Sukkot, we don't make early Shmini Atzeres. But less man the polig on those 3 Yamim Tovim, we have to make Tosefes. We don't do malacha beyond Shkia. The teretz is Hay L'chudei. Making Tosefes Yom Tov is a mitzvah. Just don't do the mitzvahs at night. So maybe the same should be regarding Shavuos. You make Tosefes Shavuos, the regular zman, whatever you do, a few minutes before Shkia, and make Kiddush B'alayla. So Lamaisa, it's interesting. We think this should be in Shulchan Aruch. It's not there. The Binyan Shlomo Vilna, in his Tikkun of Vaisafas, the Tshuva Sefer Siman Chav, he writes the following: more than 30 years that it bothers me that how could we say the Shloh quotes the Bank of Polak, very nice, it's a minig, Tamima, it's very nice. But who gives us the right to be oika a mitzvah derais of Tosefes Yom Tov? You have to make the extra Shavuos. So he says, I realize then that Lamaisa, there's a truth to the minig. But listen to his chiddush. He says it's not just tmimus. That's not enough to be oika the mitzvah of Tosefes Yom Tov. Since the pasuk v'karasam be'etzem hayoyim hazeh mikra kodesh, the Torah says to make Shavuos be'etzem hayoyim hazeh. What does etzem hayoyim hazeh mean? It's sumei shel yoyim. Keilu it's exeris akasuv. Shavuos only starts by night. So there's no makom for Tosefes Shavuos. He says, it says 3 times by Yom Kippur, Be'etzem Yom Hazeh, and we know Yom Kippur is the makar of Tosefes Yom Tov. That's the Gemara. Yuma darshans for 3 different drushes. But Lamaisa, his chiddush is that the makar of the minig of not making early Shavuos is Be'etzem Yom Hazeh. And I must mention the Ramban in Perek Chav Gimel Pasuk Chav Ches at the end seems to come out say this, ayin sham. But Lamaisa, the Netziv in Heimek Dava, in Parsh Emach Chav Gimel Chav Aleph, in Meishav Dava Siman Yud Ches, and in Hamak Sha'ala Kuf Samach Zayin, was mechavan to the same Yisod. That the reason why we don't make early Shavuos, including there's no Tosefes Shavuos, because Shavuos is different. The Yom Tov begins by Laila. There's no Yom Tov Shavuos by day, it's a sphira. There has to be Tmimos Tiyana. But here again, the Binyan Shlomo says, after he says this beautiful chiddush, but who said we could do that? We just were mechadish a drasha be'etzem hayom hazeh. Show me a Gemara. Show me a mechaba. Do we have the jurisdiction to make a drasha and be oika mitzvah deraisa of Tosefes Yom Tov? So he says, and maybe a nupshat, the karosam be'etzem hayom hazeh, the kriya of kiddush, of davening. But Lamaisa, this is the difficulty. You should know that Lamaisa, we can understand. The Mechaba begins, Tov Tzadik Dalet, quoting a Rambam, on the 50th day of Sfira, we make Yom Tov. That's very understandable. The Yom Tov of Shavuos is the 50th day. But can we say that there's no Tosefes Shavuos because of our Chiddush? More so, the Yavitz in a seudah, in the print, in the new print, the 2 volumes, Chelik Beis, Amud Kufayin Dalit, he writes the following: Sama machma not to make a early Shavuos, v'udikdish kolosh mechudish mi achronim, u'mishamagdim l'spalel, b'shir shebesrifim yechayel al kodesh. If you do it by the time of Tesef Shavuos, harei zazoros v'niska. Says it's a diuk of a heintiga. Who gives you the right to do that? And the Korban Nisan on the beginning of Arab Psachim is medayik from the Rosh. The Rosh says that every Shabbos and Yom Tov can make early Yom Tov except for Pesach. Of course, Sukkot as well. What about Shavuos? So we have to understand, put things in perspective. We follow the psak of our Gedolei Olam, the Taz, Magen Avraham, Rav, Mishtabura. We don't have a Ma'ariv early and certainly not have a seudah early. But la'alocha, we can't say it's wrong. It's a minig that some oppose. Now, is there Tosefes Yom Tiv of Shavuos? We'll soon see what that means. Just being Mekabel early Yom Tiv. So the Netziv would say no such thing. But most pais can feel, and don't forget, the Shlah allows you to daven early Ma'ariv. It's just having a seudah early. So you're going to tell me to the other extreme, we have a minig, not even Tosefes Yom Tiv? It can't be. But there's another justification why we not only could, but we should make Tosefes Shavuos. If a person comes a few minutes before Shkia and says, Areini B'Kabel, the Yom Tiv, the Heilig Yom Tiv of Shavuos, it's not nikah what he's doing. He's not saying, Yoim Chag HaShavuos Hazeh. Some people don't even say the Kabbalah. They just think it. So if you make kiddush, if you daven ma'ariv, it's nikah, you're starting Shavuos. Maybe that's wrong. Api minig. But if you just in your mind, or even verbally, quietly say, I'm a Kabbalah Yom Tiv, maybe it's not a steer to Tmimos. But I'll tell you more than that. The emes is that there are 2 parts of Tosefes Shabbos, for example. One part, the primary part, we make Friday into Shabbos. We daven, we have a seudah early. But the minimal part of Tosefes Shabbos is based on the Medrash and Parashat Bereishis, because we might be a little late. It's not good to be late. We have to have a buffer zone. So we make a prisha mi malacha. We don't do malacha starting from Tosefes Shabbos. And the truth is, those chassidim that daven mincha after Shkia on Friday afternoon, how do they have Tosefes Shabbos? They daven 20, 30, 40 minutes after Shkia. So to make Tosefes Shabbos after mincha, it's much too late. You have to mekabel Tosefes Shabbos before Shkia. So the Kajiglava in his Chuvas in Siman Samach and Eretz Tzvi says a beautiful yesod that taka those that daven mincha after Shkia, they would kabel Tosefes Shabbos before Shkia, only Prishim and Melacha. It's not yet Shabbos, but I'm not going to do Melacha now, because it might be Shabbos. So then you could daven Mincha, it's still Friday. After Mincha, you makabel Itzumei Shel Yoim. So why don't we use the same trick and say the following: when it comes a few minutes before Shkia, tonight, Haboleinu L'Toiva, I'm makabel either verbally or mentally, I'm makabel Tosefes Shavuos. Only Lagabe Melacha. Not to Malacha. I'll daven Mincha. After Mincha, I'll be Makabel Shavuos, and it's not Nikah. What do I have to lose? So there are 2 good svaris why you're allowed to make Tosefes Shavuos, and it's not a steer to Tmimas. Either it's only Pishim Malacha, it's Pashit. Even if I'm Makabel Itzumei Shel Yoim, but it's not Nikah, I'm not making Kiddush, I'm not davening. So a person could do today, before Mincha, be Kabel Tosefes, before Shkia, Kabel Tosefes Shavuos, Lagabi Malacha. After you finish Mincha, be Makabel Itzumei Shel Yoim. It's still not a stira to the Tmimis or Ba'etzem HaYoim Hazeh. Now again, like the Netziv, it's a problem, but I did see many poskim say, just be Makabel Shavuos is not a stira because it's not Nikah. Next question is also negate to all of us. There's a famous chiddush of the Prisha's Rebbetzin. It's quoted in the Akdama of the Prisha's son in Yeredeya to the Sefer Prisha, that she felt, and many places say this, Lamaisa, why do women have a minig to light neiros tonight? First night Yom Tiv, when the husband come home from shul, late at night, not just right away. Isn't there a mitzvah to light as early as possible to bring in kedushas Yom Tiv? And also, la'loch yinaldu malacha on Yom Tiv that you could have done before Yom Tiv. You could light neiros erev Yom Tiv, and then you yaitze. So she felt, and many poskim embraced this minig, that Noshim should light Erev Yom Tov like Erev Shabbos. Now, those that don't do it, that's many people have that minig for Dairis, but I'm talking about those that light every Erev Yom Tov before Shkia. The women light with the same nusach, the same, the brach, like Yom Tov, and make a brach and everything. Should they do that Erev Shavuos as well? So maybe we could make a pause here. If they're going to make the brach lahadik ner shel Yom Tov, and especially make a shehecheyanu, maybe they are losing tmimos. So how could they do that? So maybe they should only do it on Pesach and Sukkot. Or maybe I have a Murray to Gaimfal, listen to my kiddush. Maybe the whole din of tmimos is an outgrowth of the mitzvah sphira. And since Nashim are potter from sphira, they're potter from tmimos. So they could make Yom Tov early. However, it's not logical at all. Because the concept of loimi boy, if the real drasha is be'etzem hayoyim hazeh, has nothing to do with sphira. But even if it has to do with tmimos, this tmimos is not a part of sphira. This tmimos is identifying when is Shavuos, the 50th day. There's nothing to do with sphira. I saw the Hayas Nas and Chelik Zayin, Simon Laman Alf was asked by women. I guess the husband went to the Rebbe, the husband and the sons went to the Rebbe for Shavuos, and they're home alone. So you have the mother and daughters. Why should they wait up till 10 o'clock to have a seudah? Maybe they can make early Shavuos. She writes back, no. Tmimos has nothing to do with sphira. Women are chayv tmimos like men. So now we have a shtickle of a problem. So if that's the case, maybe women should not light neiros bizman, like they do always, every other Yom Tov. And indeed, this has some merit. Rav Sternbuch and Chelik Daltzim and Kufin Aleph says that a Rav was mefarsim hayrol l'Rabim, that even if the women, those women that make early, that light early on other Yom Tovim, not on Shavuos. And a few decades earlier, in the Luach Eretz Yisrael that was put up by Chil Michal Tukhchinsky, he quotes from one of the Av Bezins in his times, the same Yisoid, don't light early on Erev Shavuos, because it's lacking tmimos. However, for us, we understand why the minig is not like that. The women that light early before Shkia do it on Shavuos also. Tmimos. So for us, it's Masik Midvash. Lighting neiros does not necessarily mean you're making Shavuos. The biggest raya is that a single man that has to light neiros, he lights and then he drives to shul. Why? Because as the Vilna Gaon says in Biurei Tafkuf Chavtes, the mitzvah of lighting neiros is an Erev Shabbos mitzvah. It's covered Shabbos. It's like taking a shower. You don't take a shower on Shabbos. So neiros is an Erev Shabbos mitzvah. You do it Erev Shabbos, it goes into the night. So too Erev Yom Tov mitzvah. So you light neiros, it doesn't necessarily mean it's Shabbos. If an Isha has a Shas at Chag Gadol that she can't be Makabel Shabbos with Halakas neiros, she has to run to the hospital to have a baby. But she wants to light neiros first. So what's the minig? They light with a regular bracha, they have a mind, I'm not Makabel Shabbos, and you get into the car, and when you get there, Makabel Shabbos. So lighting neiros Erev Yom Tov does not mean it's Yom Tov. It means you did the Erev Yom Tov mitzvah. And also, it's Pashit, look at the Nusach, you didn't say Lahadik Ner Shel Shavuos. Hadner Shel Yom Tov. You didn't really breach the Tmimos. It's not a sphira like davening Ma'ariv as Yom Chag HaShavuos and you're making kiddush. So that's why Rav Sternbuch on that tshuva says Chas v'Shalom l'shana is the minig. The women that light every Erev Yom Tov early, hu adin the Yom Tov of Shavuos. Tmimos, he says maybe in the best, if you want, they can mekabel Yom Tov l'gabe prishim and malacha. So then the neiros is chal. So this is why we could say those that light neiros every Erev Yom Tov bizman, that means 80 minutes before Shkia, should and could do the same on Shavuos as well. The next question is a bit more sticky, and that is if they're lighting early, do they also make a shehecheyanu? You see, shehecheyanu is much more of a problem. Let's go back to the shal we began. Let's say an older woman must daven in her shul where she davened for years on Yom Kippur, but it's very hard for her to walk both ways. So they say if it's a Shas at Chag Gadol, she could light the Yom Kippur neiros at home and make a Tanai. I'm lighting neiros just for the mitzvah. Then I'm going to drive to shul, and then I'll makabel Yom Tov. And that people do that. But the poskim say don't make a shehecheyanu when you light the neiros, because shehecheyanu lazman hazeh is the kabbalas Yom Tov. So then you're going to be kabbalas Yom Tov, you can't get in the car. So what do we see in the word shehecheyanu lazman hazeh? That it's a kabbalas Yom Tov. So that's why Rav Sternbuch, not in that tshuva, but actually he just put out a sefer tshuvas and haggis on Shavuos. In the very first page, he says, avada they can light early, but don't make a shehecheyanu. Why? Because then you have a kabbalah the Yom Tov. Wait till later, and when the husband makes kiddush, you can be yotz with his shehecheyanu of kiddush. Now, even that, I must tell you, is not so pashut. I saw the Heintige Poskim, again, I only found Heintige Poskim, Rav Felder in his sefer, Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shab in the Halicha Shlomo, Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, and all their svarim say that if we assume that Hadlokis neiros is not a stira to Tmimois, so why is shehecheyanu a stira? Shehecheyanu is a shehecheyanu on what? On the Hadlokis neiros, perhaps. So I would just tell you that those nashim that have that minig, they light erev Shavuos bisman with the shehecheyanu, avad yesha milismach. Some make this compromise. I always felt it's going to be confusing, because the first night they're going to make shehecheyanu, not then. Second night, of course, you do because it's late. And Avi Yom Tov, yes, Magen Avraham writes in Reish Tam Magim Sif Katan Yud Beis regarding the priest's wife's chiddush of making oivel asiyasam by neiros. He says, if you can do that, you're going to confuse the women. We say loy plug now, because we can't have every Yom Tov something different. So Lamaisa, some want to say that you could taka make a shehecheyanu, and that's probably the right thing if that's your minig. If some want to make the shehecheyanu later, there's a mile. I'll tell you why. Because it's the oldest shayla. When the women make shehecheyanu by the neiros, then when the husband makes the shehecheyanu by kiddush, the question is, can you say amein? The amein is irrelevant for, and it's a hefsek between the bracha and the drinking. So if she decides to not make shehecheyanu then, be yotz with the husband's shehecheyanu, she avoids that problem. She can listen to shehecheyanu, make an amein with the ganze ganzkeit, and there's no problem of hefsek. But again, those women that want to make shehecheyanu, avada is what to be soymech on. It's pashut that it's not on the itzuma shel yoim at that point. Now, which is also pashut, a single man, or we have in the yeshiva a bracha. You see, brachim light every erev Shabbos in the yeshiva with a bracha. But Yom Tov, they're not there. They're not there Pesach or Sukkot. But Shavuos, they're there. So I told them the same like a single man. They should light neiros, taka if they want bisman, but they're not makabel Yom Tov, because men are not makabel Yom Tov. They have to have a mincha. If they really want to daven, they daven mincha gedoyel early, light neiros, and be makabel itzumei shel yoim. Wonderful. Why not? Again, it's not even itzumei shel yoim. It's not a stira to tmimos. Now, in extenuating circumstance, no doubt about it, let's say an older person in a hospital where they serve supper 7 o'clock, there's no seudah later, in nursing homes, or better yet, European countries, some European countries, it's as late as 11:30, 12 o'clock is first seis. So you're going to start davening Ma'ariv at 12? So Lamaisa, many poskim say, B'shas atchak, let's put things in perspective, the shla is a minig. The primary minig is by the seudah. Try to daven, as late as possible. But if it need be, even daven ma'ariv and the seudah, if it is still miboy joim, avadi yoytza. It's only maybe according to the Netziv that the Yom Tov begins be'etzem hayom hazeh. Maybe then you're not yoytza. But mainstream poskim assume that the shla in the most is a minig, and a minig should be observed if it's shaykh, if there's no other choice, avada, you could eat the seudah, daven ma'ariv, before this man, that's better than nothing, and that's for sure. Now, to make it more practical, let's say this time of the year in Shavuos, if someone could have ma'ariv 8:30, so already it's a few minutes after Shkia, and the seudah is 9 o'clock, so 9 o'clock is there's one zmana of the goinim, that 9 o'clock is already, tzeis kechavim. So that would be a fair compromise, but if they have to do it even much earlier, avada, the zman of laila is not ma'akiv. Now, the ik is to remember, again, perspective. There's one of the kadmonim, the Yosef Oim, Simon Tov Sof Nun, he quotes the shla, and he says, but I saw Rabbanan Kashishoi, Baalei Maisa, that they were living in Germany who did not, or not makbid like the shlah. They made early Shavuos. Why? Listen to his cheshbon. He says, because lamais they stay up late learning. Hamalachim merubav aleilis kitzarim ad ma'oid. If you're going to wait to daven ma'ariv bizman, by tzeis, and the seudah, what's left? How much time will be left? Ma yasu levesa manitzchi. L'chein nirali rachmana liba boy echad amar be'echad amamit. If you want to make early Shavuos to be able to learn longer, it's also good. Now, if I would say, who gives you right to say that? But this is the Yosef Oimitz, who knew the shlah, but Rabbanan Kashishoy that were not makbid. So if someone feels he can't do it, avad he's yoitza, even though it's mi ba'oid yoy. The next question is the Ma'ariv. So to make a point, the Ma'ariv of Shavuos has the Abbas Oilam. Every night we should use that, but especially on Shavuos night, for two reasons. First of all, it's the Yom Tov, as Usunshi. The Shlah says it's the Yom Din of Torah. We have to daven for Torah. But more so, for those that slept on Erev Shavuos, so according to some, they're Mechuyv B'Berachas Torah. So what Mishmur says, but L'maisa, we don't make another B'Berachas Torah by day, because even Hashem has kva, but by Ma'ariv have a mind to be yotz with Abbas Oilam and make sure to learn after Ma'ariv. So this is a good example. Erev Shavuos, many people sleep Erev Shavuos. By Ma'ariv, Abbas Oilam have a mind to be yotz with the Abbas Oilam, and more importantly, after Aleinu, before you say good Yom Tov to people, take out a seudah and say the psukim or mishnayos, say something, a pasuk, so the brach is chal, because you have to learn right after Aleinu. Now, for this year it's no longer Negeya, but for next year, Metchem, and those that it's Negeya, when it's Negeya, the B'Berachas Torah of Erev Shavuos should be said with extra kavana, because this is the one B'Berachas Torah that has to last us for 24 hours. It lasts us from this morning until tomorrow morning by alois. Now, there's another halacha of the seudah Yom Tov, and that is the minig of having milchigs. So I once saw a collection of at least 12 reasons to have milchigs. But one I want to mention because it's Negei L'maisa. The Shita Mekubetzes in bracharishona, Davav Med Beis, and it's also a Medrash in Tehillim, says that when the Barsha wanted to give Torah to Klal Yisrael, the Malachim gave, no, give it to us, to Noit Chal Shemayim. So the Barsha says, no, I can't give you the Torah, you ate Bas B'chalav. Now people say it's a Gemara, it's no such Gemara. It's either the Shita quoting Yerushalmi or a Medrash in Tehillim. So the Baruch says, oh, you ate Bas Machal by Avram Avinu, you can't get the Torah. So everybody asked the Kasha Mamanasha. The Issa Deraisa Bas Chalav is only if it was cooked together. So if Avram Avinu cooked Bas Chalav, so he was Ivan Deraisa, it's too late. Teretz is a Chas V'Sham, Avram wasn't Ivan Deraisa, he gave them Bas separate and Chalav separate. So Frek the Stipula in Bechas Peretz Paras Vayera, it's only D'Abanan. Why did they lose the Torah? For D'Abanan? So that one teretz he says that they didn't eat the food, they were malachim, they put it in their mouths, they were malachim, they burnt the food. So they were oivan bishul basa b'chalav. Now it's a big kiddush, because when you burn something, it's not bishul. Just like if you burn a piece of paper, chas sham on Shabbos, it's the issa of avara, but you're not oiva al tzmechika. So if you burn it, you're not cooking it. So I think that's why he writes, but the yoisinera, that the real pshat is, the yoisinera, that's the message. Even for an Issa D'Rabbanan, you lose the Torah. Chaviv Divrei Sefer. That's what he wants to say. So I once said this over, and then after I found, to put it and see before, the Chasam Sofer says the same thing, from a different angle. The Chasam Sofer in Paras Vayera has the same cheshbon. Avram gave them heter gomer, challah, basa, bread, and water. Drink. Avram's cheshbon was they're going to eat chalav. Look up Yeridei Sim and pay test. Between chalav and basa, you have to have kinuach v'adach. You have to eat a solid food and drink. So he gave them bread and he gave them drink and then basa. But the problem is Sarah Pearson neither. She couldn't give them bread, so they only had chalav, basa, and water. So they made hadacha, but they didn't make kinuach. They didn't have the food. For that they lost the Torah. So it's interesting, we eat milchigs on Shavuos, we'll soon see, to regain the Torah by being zoyer in Hilchos Bas B'chalav D'Rabbanan, both Stipula and the Chasam Sofer. but sometimes painful, people have by day, especially a milchig kiddush, and they want to be yotzei to have it in one seudah. So it's a whole shtickle Torah if you have it before bracharishona in between, or you could have it in the same seudah. But remember one thing: the ikka of all this minig is to do it right. So after you have your milchig food, have a real kinuach, a real piece of challah, a real hadacha, and then when your mouth is clean, then you can have basa. But it'll be very counterproductive to not, if you don't make kinuach hadacha. That's the side of this minig. Another point that it was kedai to mention, the Toras Chaim in Bava Metzia, Peivav Beis, he's one of the kadmoinim on Shas. So he makes it even more important, and he says, why do we eat milchigs on Shavuos? He says, because Lamaisa, we got the Torah because of his zehiros. So he says, it's not just that we got the Torah in the year 2448. Every year is a new Kabbalah Torah. Every year we have to regain or be zoicha once again for the schus of the Torah. What was it then in the year 2448? As zehiros in the bas v'chalav. The Malachim didn't, and we did. So every year we create a new situation of eating chalav and basa, and we do it right. So if it's made to do it right, let's make sure we do it right. Rabbi Aaron Grada in Lakewood, he would give the Bachim would eat the milchig seudah on Leil Shavuos. Why? Because he said that Lamaisa milchigs is lighter than a heavy fleishigs, and if you eat a heavy seudah, you might fall asleep. Now, I'm not advocating that minig. Many people, first of all, want to have a seudah basa every Yom Tov, and some people ask me, what do you mean, but it doesn't challah put a person to sleep? That's not my point. My point is, it's a focus on what's important. You know, the seudah and the learning, everything is leading up to the Torah. The Shavuos writes, so the ikka is the seudah, the milchigs, whether you eat milchigs or not, but the ikka is to make the night count. It would be very worthwhile, if you have time, take out the shlo tak in the beginning of Shavuos, and again, chelik dal gimel amid dalet. He writes, Lahares gedoyles mailos zois halaylam ech shechavav ne'akadosh baruch hu levilti nidaim rega achas midvekes haTorah, and he goes on to say a ma'isa pella ma'oid what happened on Shavuos in his times. Ayin sham v'timtza nachas, it'll make your learning or saying tikkun chatzos, tikkun leil Shavuos much more meaningful. Now, just a few points about the actual takamilchigs cheesecake. So the bracharishona on cheesecake is challenging because mi'ikad din you go basaroiv, and typically the cheese is the ikka. But the Gemara in Shulchan Reish Ches Sif Beis says when you have any mezainis, so then the mezainis becomes the ikka, and that's why the old-fashioned cheese danishes was a clear cut of mezainis. There was a mezainis, and even though the cheese might be the ikka. Now the only issue has become in recent years when cheesecake, the cake is becoming less and less, and the cheese is the ikka. What's the shaila? Because even though mezainis is always ikka, but when mezainis is put in just ledabek to hold it together, or if you have a thin layer of mezainis, not because of the taste of mezainis, it's rikikin dakin, like a wafer, just to hold the food, the cheese. You don't want to stick your hand and take cheese. So you have a little thin layer of mezainis, but it's more like a spoon than it is a food. So when the mezainis is there for tam or l'svaya, it's vadayikah. When the mezainis is there l'dabek, for example, no one makes a mezainis on gefilte fish or meatballs. Either there's flour in it, teretz is, that's l'dabek. So if it's l'dabek or to hold on to it, then it's bottle. So today's cheesecake, some feel, might be like that. It's a very thin layer. But it's generally not true, not mistavra. Because lamaisa, the mezainis they make is something of taste, exquisite taste, albeit. But if it's there for taste, even if it's a small amount, it's still a mezainis. Again, very rarely do we find that the mezainis is just there to hold it up so you can eat the cheese. So b'derech klal, I can't give a cloud, but if there's a layer of mezainis, even if it's thin, either for taste or l'svia, the bracha is mezainis. But the catch is that almost always the bracharishona is not going to be an yaalehv'yavo, because you have to have a kazayis of dogon to make an yaalehv'yavo. And even though the Mishnah Berurah says his famous kiddush, Reish Ches Sivkat Mem Ches, actually not, he tries to lamas chus on Klal Yisrael. let's say I would give you a piece of sponge cake. It's exactly kazayis. Reb Chaim Kayevsky, Paskin, perfect kazayis. Do you make an alamichya? What's a shaila? Not pashit. Because part of it is sugar and cocoa, or whatever it is. So Mr. Burr says, really, you shouldn't make an alamichya on that. But the minig oilam is to make an alamichya, probably because they hold that since it becomes one with the cake, then it becomes mezainis. He says, but Lamais, it's better to have a piece of cake that has a kazayis of flour. But maybe the minig oilam is okay. Rav Moshe and Chelik Aleph Siman Ayin Aleph and the Satmarav and Divrei Yoel Siman Yud Gimel take strong exception. It's a minig oilam, that's a minig tois. Why are you perpetuating minig tois? How do you make chocolate and sugar into mezainis? So they say you have to have a piece of cake that the flour ingredients is a kazayis. Now the emes is not so big, a regular sized piece of cake, chalk cake or sponge cake is definitely kazayis of flour. But the point is that that's only regarding a piece of cake that has mostly flour. If you have a piece of cheesecake that there's not a kazayis of flour at all, then the only choice would be, like Mr. Brewer says, to make a mezainis taka, that's true, and a bar nefashos. If there's no alamichya, you add up the two ingredients and make a bar nefashos. Shem Zalman says in Chelik Aleph, Simon Sadak Aleph, in the Chuvas, there's no doubt about it. Even the Mr. Brewer that holds you could count ingredients, that's if it became one with the cake, like cocoa and sugar, but a layer of pie, of cheesecake, is zicha not bottle. So, 2 points. The cake might be mezainis, fine. The alamichya is probably wrong, unless you have a big, like a cheese Danish. But more than that, you can't be yotze a kiddush makam seudah with that piece of cheesecake if there's no kazayis of dagon. It has to be makam seudah mamish. Another question, moving on, in the next morning, we learn the whole night, or say tikkun all night, and it comes the morning, for those that are davening, what do we do about Bechas HaTorah? So the minig Yisrael is that someone that slept by night makes the brachas as might see all of us. Now, that person has an achronah. He has to be on time. Because by comes alois, some feel you have to stop learning until you hear the brachas. Alois is a new day, and a new day is Mechayah Bechas HaTorah. So some, in fact, say that you can't learn by alois because you didn't have Bechas HaTorah. Now, to me, that's very hard to accept. It's a mass bittul Torah. If you ever saw it, you have a full yeshiva, and the fellow's late, and everybody's walking around doing nothing. I mean, the Shavuos is not to waste a moment on such a heilig morning. It's wrong to waste so much time. So that's why the person that does it has to be on time. But lo yitzui is late. Most poskim hold there's no reason. It's wrong to stop learning, and the cheshbon is pashit. Who told you that if you didn't make Bechas HaTorah, it's also to learn? If you didn't make a bracha, it's also lo shaifa. The teretz is that maybe we'll say that it's something like a Bechas HaNenin, or even like a Bechas HaMitzvah, that chatchili should have to have the bracha first. But Zoktem Arshag in Chelik Aleph Siman Samach Beza a go'ina shavort. Be'emes, why do you think that comes alois you have a problem? What's up with alois? Teretz is because alois is a new day. A new day is mechayiv all birchais haidah hashachar. That's when it starts. So since, as we spoke last week, the main part of Bechas HaTorah is the haidah. Rashi in brachas yud aleph mavez, it's haidah and kilos for the Torah, the Baruch and Klal Yisrael. So if it's a Bechas haidah, you have to say it by alois. Bechas HaMitzvahs, there's no chiyuv by alois. You learn straight. You're going straight. Nothing changed. It's only Bechas haidah. So let's make a cheshbon. Als Bechas HaMitzvahs, there's no chiyuv alois. It's only Bechas haidah. Bechas haidah, there's no issa of having anah before the bracha. We put on our shoes in the house, we make brachas in shul. Just like Teretz, Bechas haidah does not require right away, and there's no issa. So that's why he says you could taka learn after alois, and his b'chlal maybe the cutter point is nets. So if the fellow is late, continue learning. When he comes, you're allowed to hear the brachas then. You know what it's like? I'll tell you what it's like. There's a halacha in Siman Dalet Sif Tezayin, negayat to the Yisrael Kedoshim every single day. Those that wake up taka very early, fatogs. So the Mechaber says, even though you wash negavas when you woke up, but could be when it comes alois, you have to wash again. Because the Ruach Ruach comes by alois. And therefore, the Amos says, wash your hands below bracha. Now, doik v'tishkach, I'm not zoicha to be from Fatogziden, but those that have shiurim early in the morning, don't stop by Alois to wash their hands, because it's only a chumrah. So, be machmir and bittul Torah. Then oilam should stop learning and line up to wash their hands. It would be very distracting. So Shavuos morning, we try to hear the brachas right away, true. But if we don't hear the brachas, you could continue learning until you hear the brachas. What happens often, either no one comes to make the brachas, no one slept, or a bracha went out, or a person went out to the bathroom and came back, he missed the brachas. What do you do if you didn't hear the brachas on someone that slept by night? So the emphasis, Mr. Brewer says, wait, have a mind to yait for avarabba. Of course, learn after davening, but don't make the brachas. Many poskim, Abba Yashiv, especially Hasidic poskim, who go with the ikad the din that Bechad Torah is a deraisa, and sveika deraisa l'chumra, especially if you slept by day, you have kivegas tonight, they can make their own bracha. Avada, that's a sheet that you can be seimach on. But I think the minig oilam is, if you missed it, you could be yoitza with avarabba. Those that do not daven by Alois, they go to sleep and daven the regular 9 o'clock. Just to make 2 points, that don't forget, this time of the year, actually Shavuos is my Christmas 8:34 and 9:16. 9:10, I'm sorry, 8:34, 9:10. So unless you make sure you're up by for the first man, many people have the minute, they say Krishma after Alois, and they go to sleep. And that's where the Mashak says, those that do that, they ask them to have to make a new Birchas HaTorah. I'm saying it after Alois. He says, no, he makes the Achesh B'monashach. Those that do say Krishma and go to sleep, when they wake up, they make all the brachas. So the Mashak, they have a fakert Monashach. If you hold the new day's Mechayiv, it's a new day. If you hold the sleepers Mechayiv, they have that also. So when you wake up to daven at your regular Zman Tefillah for shacharis of Shabbos and Yom Tiv, you can make all the brachas lechatchila. Some people go to sleep dafka to have the schus of making Birchas Torah in the morning. It shows you what Birchas Torah really is all about. Those that daven v'sikin, were yoitzu with someone before davening, and they sleep many hours to make up for the night's sleep, there would be a tzad to say they should make Birchas Torah when they wake up. Because they didn't just sleep a nap, it's a night's sleep, and they go to sleep in big day shena. And Takadi Mekarchayim, and I saw the Heshem Moshe says they can make their new Birchas HaTorah, but it's not the minik. And the Svara HaYeshara is, if you were Yaitza this morning, the new day with the Birchas HaTorah, new day was Yaitza the entire day. But those people that did sleep, typically you do sleep after davening, have another schus. They should remember by Avos Oilam, the second night, to be Yaitza just in case. And after Aleinu, same story, don't say Geshach, Yom to the people, make sure you say Psukim. So you have 2 Avos Oilam that we're using on this Heilige day. The Hallel on Shavuos, besides the regular mitzvah Hallel on Yom Tiv, I saw Rav Sternbuch in Moed Mezmanim, Chelik Zayin, Kuf Yud Gimel, develops a beautiful theme, Al Pi the Ramban, that is part of it's part of the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tiv, specifically the Yom Tiv of Torah. The Levush in Tov Tzadik Dal Tzif Aleph is Oimim Halol Bebeis Yomim Mishum Oimim Shira Al Nesinas HaTorah. There's a new function of Halol besides the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tiv. By every Yom Tiv, it's a Halol HaTorah, and that's why the Pais can say one should sing by Halol and say Halol with the ganze ganzkeit, even if you're tired, but say it because it's a shira. You know, there's a beautiful lashon Avos Rav Nosson talks about all of you in the beginning of Perek Chav Ches. There's no greater hava than Avos HaTorah. Zok the Binyan Yeshua he's in Mefarish on that Avos Rav Nosson. It's the psukim all over that say this. But for example, Va'at alis al kulana. The Eishes Chayil, as we know, Rashi is going on the Torah. The Torah has the greatest ahava. So when do we express our ahava in the fullest way? This is Shavuos. Avarabba, Avos Oilam, Birchas HaTorah, Hallel. Another unique feature of Shavuos is the oldest kasha. Every Yom Tiv, we needed a Yom Tiv Sheni because we weren't sure when Yom Tiv really was. We were living other end of the world. We didn't know when Chodesh Nisan was. We didn't know when Pesach was. But the Chassam Sofer in the Tshuva Archaim Kuf Mem Hey, really it's the Rambam who says, why do we have to have a Yom Tiv Sheni of Shavuos? It's 50 days from you started counting. So even if you don't know when Chodesh Sivan is, it makes no chilik. Do you know in times of when the Makas Riyah, Shavuos can be either hey, vav, or zayin, depending on the Riyah. But you don't have to know, basically, in our time, you have to know when Rosh Chodesh was. Just count. So it could be that this Shavuos Yom Tov Sheni is not B'Torah Safek, B'Torah Vaday. Also, they plug for other Yom Tovim, and maybe it's more Chomer. The coolers of Yom Tov Sheni don't apply for Yom Tov Sheni of Shavuos. Now, Lamais, a lot has been written, many poskim strongly contest this, and the Chassam Sofer himself in a different tshuva writes that halacha there's no difference, but there's a point there that, like the Pri Megadim points out, and this would explain from a different angle, in Tov Tzadik Sif Katan Ches, he writes almost kalachiyad, but it's amazing, he takes the liberty of saying this. He says that I think we keep Yom Tov Sheni on Shavuos because really the Torah was given on Zayin Sivan, and that's why we lay in Rus on the second day. So he's making a cheshbon that the real Kabbalah Torah is Zayin Sivan, so the second day is the Ikka. What's my point? My point is simple. We don't know which is the right day. Treat them both with the same cheshivos. You know, sometimes the person is tired after a long day, the first day of Shavuos, but in a certain sense, that's the Hashlama. There's an incredible lashon Tana de Belio Perik Lamed. When I was in Eretz Yisrael before the Churban, we kept one day, and it was good. Now that we went into Golus, we keep 2 days, and none of them are good. So there's a beautiful sefer Yom Tov Sheni Chachasa explains that in Eretz Yisrael, even today, they have the ability to make Yom Tov one day, Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos. In Chutz La'aretz, we don't have the Kedusha Sa'aretz. We can't do it in one day. It's like 2 halves of a whole. The 2 days, it's not replaying the first day, just making believe. You need 2 days to make one day. So every day, every Yom Tov Sheni has that special importance of being the Hashlam of the first day. Okay, I had planned Lamaisa to talk a little bit about the trees and flowers, but I have to leave that because I want to talk about something else, which I think is really the most important halacha of our sugya today. Someone asked me a number of years ago, it was like this year, the Erev Shavuos was Sunday. He told me he has a day off, and he wants to go to the hospital, donate blood, a nice mitzvah, and he has time, why not? And someone told him he should ask a shayla. So the emphasis is not, the person that told him that was very good mechavan, and I think we come now to the most important halacha of Shavuos that we have to know. The Gemara says in Shabbos Kuf Chavtes that on Erev Shavuos, when the Torah was given, it was a person, there was a tremendous sakana, because there was a shindal, a shed, tavuach shmoy, that was roaming the world. Whoever was not makabel the Torah, and he said, the Gemara says, pachad dikalashin, habitavachlu levisrayu uldamayu. It would be a bloodbath, a massacre. If you didn't keep the Torah, he's going to destroy you, everything. Zok the Gemara, therefore, on Erev Shavuos, don't do anything that might be dangerous. For example, don't be makers dam, don't make bankers, bloodletting, which wasn't terribly dangerous, but it was a dangerous undertaking. So the Gemara, even though this halach is said on Erev Shavuos, the minig is Erev Pesach and Erev Sukkot also, we don't do anything that's slightly dangerous, like plug out to Erev Shavuos. And all this is in Hilchos Pesach, Tov Sambaches, Hilchos Erev Pesach actually, that we don't do anything of dangerous chashashis on Erev Pesach and Sukkot out to Erev Shavuos. Now this, a plea in this Gava is an understatement. First of all, what's wrong with Shavuos? It's not, today's not 2-4-2-8, today is Tav Shem Pei Hey. What's the danger about doing something dangerous in Erev Shavuos? And it's so dangerous that we geyser 2 days or to 1 day. Usually you geyser a meat or to right. You geyser Pesach and Sukkot or to Shavuos. Zok the machzah shekel. Off and on. And that halacha, that ramah in Tov Samaches, you're making a mistake. A Yid doesn't commemorate a Yom Tov. We don't make a memorial day. We remember what happened then. A Yid goes through the Yom Tov every year. And his lashon is V'chol zmanim k'she'ira l'vayseinu inyan ma k'she'gia zois hahu, that time shum mish'oira me'en oisam davar ve'ena, it's not stam zikaron ba'alma. In other words, today is Erev Shavuos, like 2-4-4-8, and we're going to makabel the Torah, and we have to do it right. Now, Lamaisa, maybe donating blood is not dangerous. Not my point. My point is not the surgery, elective surgery on Erev Shavuos. My point is to remind you, as the Derech Hashem writes, Cheldal Perek Zayin, Kol Tikkun Sheniskenu, and the Or Gadol that happened by Yom HaMahem, re-happens every year, Bazman Hazeh. And that's why he says, Al Derech Zeh Chag HaShavuos Lamatan Torah. And it's very meduyik, you can understand the Teras Chaim. Because Teras Chaim said we have to be careful with milchigs this year. Why this year? We got the Torah. And he tells us, he says, Ayin Ramah Tov Samaches. Because it's all the same point. We eat milchigs to be zoicha to the Torah. We care from sakana. I'll tell you another point. The Poskim say, it's based on the Rambam and others, you're not allowed to show favoritism or show cheshivas to one part of the Torah over the other. In fact, as the Poskim say, that you're not allowed to stand by Aseres HaDibris if you don't stand by the rest of the laning. Why? You're showing cheshivas to one part of the Torah and the other. And there's no difference between the ayin of Achrois Loit and Timna than the ayin of Shema Yisrael. And that's why by many Svarish Akilas, there's a kepeda to sit by the laning, including Aseres HaDibris. What's the minik Klal Yisrael, especially Ashkenaz, that we do stand for Aseres HaDibris? Zokte Dvar Shmuel, who's got a Svardi, and Reish Ayin Vav, you're making a mistake. We're not standing to show Cheshivas to Aseres HaDibris. We're standing because we're getting the Aseres HaDibris. This year, like every year, there's new Kabbalah Torah. And if it says, Vayisyatsu b'tachtis sahar, you have to stand then, you stand today. So think about it. Eat milchigs, we avoid danger. We stand by Aseres HaDibris. The Ramah says, in Siv Gimel, we put out grass in the shul, Zeicha to Matan Torah. The Magen Avraham says, we put out trees, branches of trees in shul. It's not by Yom HaMahem, it's Bazman Hazeh. The Medrash Talpiyos Erech Dudayim says people buy flowers with fragrant smell because when the Torah was given, there was a tremendous boisim, a tremendous fragrance. These halachas, eating milchigs, doing something dangerous, flowers, trees, standing as Aseres HaDibris, it's reminding us of the godless hayoim. But there's more than that. The Shloh, the Magen Avraham writes that we put trees in the shul because of the fact that it's B'chag nidainin al ha'ilanos. The Mishnah says in bracharishona, Dr. Shloh in Chelik Gimel Amud Zayin, there's a deeper message. What does it mean? What do I care if B'chag nidain al ha'ilanos? Dr. Shloh Adam Eitz HaSodah. The peiros is a person's produce, what he produces. Dr. Shloh, and it's Kedai to see the Lashon, Chelik Gimel Amud Zayin, that Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tiv of Gashmias. Shavuos is the Yom Tiv, the Yom Adin of Ruchnias. It's the Nidainin on the Ruchnias, on Torah, on a Chalkeinu b'Torah. And that's why he says, we have to make sure the davening is perfect, the learning is perfect. It's the Rosh Hashanah of Ruchnias. Tzaddikim used to say, Rosh Hashanah, no, Ashtikal Breit Ahin, Ashtikal Breit Aher, but Shavuos, Habechmayra. That's the real Yisoid. Now, a va'ad has to be with a tremendous simcha. The Seudah Yoim writes, Roy sheyismach boy adam is simcha yisera. A va'ad, you look at the Seudah Avoida, he writes about the simcha that you have in the seudah, and it's not the pachad of the Rosh Hashanah of miyich miyamas, but it's the simcha that if we show avas at Torah, if ein lecha avas al Torah, we'll be zoicha to the Torah. The Kotzki used to say, it's not called Zman Kabbalas Tereseinu. It's Zman Matan Tereseinu. The Torah is being given every year. Misha Yirtza, yaalehv'yavo. It's up to us to take. So that's the most important halacha. Remember the gadlus hayoyin. The simchas hayoyin brings the gadlus hayoyin. It's 2 days of ein lecha avak avas shel Torah. I'll leave you with one more thought. I remember many years ago, I saw the Matei Ephraim, Taf Reish Chafei. He's talking about Hilchas Sukkah. The end of Yom Nerem has Hilchas Sukkahs. So he writes there, it's a very good idea before you go to shul, Erev Shavuos, Erev Sukkos, daven a tefillah. The Yom Tov should come, I should be besimcha, I should be matzliach in the Yom Tov. I remember then I thought it's a very good idea, because a lot's going on in Sukkos. In the Sukkah, we have to make sure that the children are behaving, and the Shalom Bayis is good, and the mitzvahs are good. I mean, there's so many complicating factors with the Sukkah, with the alaminim. So it's a good idea to daven on Sukkos that everything should go b'shalom. Then I came Pesach. I said, Pesach, Lo Menigara. Pesach has even maybe more going on. The seudah night and the chametz and the matzah. You have to daven. It should be b'shalom and it should be b'atzlacha. And then I came to Shavuos. I realized Shavuos needs it the most. Shavuos is our Yom Tov. Shavuos is our mi yichya and ruchiyas. So let us daven taka erev Shavuos by mincha. We should have a dahaybin Yom Tov, a Yom Tov aliyah. It should not be just a Yom Matan Tereseinu. It should be a Yom Kabbalas Tereseinu b'meher v'yameinu. Amen.
Shem Egen Shirtar like a big shehecheyanu Smith for today's shir. As Shem after kiddush, we're supposed to say sikum. Just want to know to anyone who's joining the shir through the phone or watching through the stream about answering the kiddush. So milchigs are posting about answering kiddush from other place on the phone. Answering if you're hearing it right away within a second on the phone, but watching through the stream, it's a minimum of like 20 seconds later, so there's no postscript that hold that you can answer Kaddish on watching through the live stream. Chanani ben Akachem Motzak Eshbochel Zakis es Yisrael Figure Him Ter Mitzvah Nemal and Achofes and Matzidke Yagdol Ter V'Yader. Yagdol V'Skadish Mei Rabba.
Hey!
Ander Lutzi Hama Chutz V'Yashem V'Ner V'Kar M'Shichek. V'Yek V'Mechem Chayel V'Beis Yisrael V'Agol Ozman Karev M'Almei. Hey!
It's just
okay. Trying to make an early sikum at least.
Just let's review what we learned today. First of all, the concept of tmimos, believe it or not, is no more than a minig. It's not a chiyuv like the netziv. Maybe it's based on a pasuk, but it's basically to keep the Yom Tov on after 7 weeks tmimis or be'etzem hayom hazeh. It's a minig based on kadmoinim or b'ankapolik over 600 years ago. But keep that in mind that for those that can't do it, it's only a minig. If someone has to eat early and daven early, avada, that's certainly not just better than nothing, that's doing the mitzvah without the minig. According to some, the only minig is regarding the kiddush. Ma'ariv is allowed to be davened earlier, but as we said, the poskim Hashem Piyam Anuchayim extended the minig even to Ma'ariv as well. We should also mention that if you do our makbid and Ma'ariv, you could start Ma'ariv, let's say 50 as opposed to 72, unless you're makbid with 72 dafka. I should mention also that there is still a mitzvah of Teisefes Yom Tiv on Shavuos, because it's like every other Yom Tiv, is a mitzvah deraisa of Teisefes Yom Tiv, either because it's not nicker, or because it's only Prishim Melach, or even if you make it Itzumah Shal Yoim, but you're not pronouncing it to be a stira to Tmimos. And especially if you're allowed to daven Ma'ariv early, Yekidadin, so Teisefes Shavuos is perfectly okay and probably a chiyuv. A person could come early and he could be makabel Prishim Melacha, but something should be done. Nashim that do light every Erev Yom Tov Bizman, in other words before Shkia, can do the same Erev Shavuos with even the brach of shehecheyanu. A single man or a bracha lighting in yeshiva should do like he does every Shabbos. If he can light it but tonight, he's not makabel the Yom Tov, and no shehecheyanu of course, and of course you make the bracha on the neiros, then you light the neiros, and then you yaitz the mitzvah. Ma'ariv, I've got the words of the Yosef Oimetz. If a person can't keep this minig, so avada is yaitz without the minig, and you do the best you could do. Ma'ariv, we try to be yaitz with avos olam if you slept Erev Shavuos and learn after Ma'ariv. The milchig minig is to regain the schus of getting the Torah. We have to do it bayom mahem bizman hazeh, like they got it then because Avram was makbid and the malachim weren't. To remember the nachas ruach the bracharishona has from our learning, or tikkun on this laila, the shlaz, beautiful words. Cheesecake is usually a bar nefasha, a mezainis, bar nefashais, and not kiddush makam seudah. You don't have to stop for alois either learning or to say krishma after alois, because as we said, you can be saimach that until you hear the brachas you're allowed to learn. Those that go to sleep before davening, when they wake up, they make all the brachas. Just remember to say Krishma Bizman. Those that go to sleep after davening, do not make the new brachas again when they wake up. That's pashit. The Hallel should be a feeling of Ein Locha Ava Ka'ava Shel Torah. It's a Simchas Yom Tov. It should be said properly. The unique Yom Tov Sheni of Shavuos is, maybe that's really the Kabbalah Satorah. And again, as we saw, the halachas of not doing anything dangerous, Erev Shavuos, of eating milchigs, putting out grass, flowers, trees, standing as Eretz HaDibris is a new Kabbalah Satorah that should turn the Matan Torah into Kabbalah Satorah. Yom Adin of Limud HaTorah deserves our total, full involvement. Yom Tov,
reconcile with the fact that everybody who's Hoysha Yom Echad Midata, so we're Zayin sitting.